Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest is scheduled for your listening pleasure. Making his way to the ring, your host of the Turnbuckle Topics Podcast, here's Pat Deneen.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics Podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen, and this is my full review of NXT New Year's Evil. Now, we're back in Los Angeles, California, yet again, much like Monday Night Raw. This time, though, we are not at the Intuit Dome. We were at the Shrine Expo Hall. Nice setting, especially for these NXT type of crowds. Just a good feel overall. We had a 5-match card for this show, 3 championships on the line. Also, a number 1 contendership for the Women's North American Championship. And by the way, 3 of these 5 matches, women's matches, which I'll get into in just a bit, hour 1 was primarily dedicated to the women. So, the first 3 matches of the night, all women. They did a fantastic job. So I can't wait to go over all of that. We got to find out, we got Corey Graves returning to the NXT commentary table for the first time, and I want to say at least 7, maybe 8 years. I'll be honest with you guys. He didn't look thrilled. He didn't look thrilled to be there. I'm not sure how good this dynamic is going to work going forward. I have the utmost faith in Vic Joseph and Corey Graves making it happen. Obviously, it's a 3-man booth now. Booker T has been alongside Vic Joseph for the better part of a year and a half, almost 2 years, since they swapped out Wade Barrett, who's been bouncing between Raw and SmackDown the last couple of years. So we'll see how this 3-man booth goes, but I don't know, man. Booker T doesn't really leave you any room for a word edgewise. And even early on, Corey Graves was trying to respond to something that Booker T had posed to him at the top of this show. And Corey even mentioned, well, if you let me speak, I would be glad to answer your questions. So we'll see how that goes. But again, Corey Graves can't be thrilled, especially this big move for Monday Night Raw going to Netflix. Just a few months ago, he was pretty much the lead on SmackDown, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was Corey Graves alongside Wade Barrett. Then Joe Tessitore stepped in on Monday Night Raw a couple of months ago. At that moment in time, I do believe they then moved Wade Barrett over to Raw to accompany him. And then they put Michael Cole on Friday Night SmackDown, where we then would have Cole and Graves for a couple of months up until last Friday. So we'll see how this goes. I do like Corey Graves. But I don't know. I was a little surprised, to say the least, to see him on NXT at the start of this show. So, I mean, maybe he wanted this, perhaps, and I'll leave it at that. I mean, I think him and Carmella live in Florida. So, of course, they got a baby, I think just turned 1 a month or 2 ago. So maybe that could be all part of it, but I don't know. Outside of for family reasons, I can't see him opting and saying during the hottest time ever, especially for the main roster, oh no, I don't want to be on Raw, or I don't want to be on SmackDown, but Raw is back to Michael Cole and Pat McAfee as of Monday night. Going forward on SmackDown, as early as this Friday, we will see Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett, the duo we saw on Monday Night Raw the last couple of months, move to SmackDown. So that's that. Sticking with the 2-man booths, and NXT is 3-man for now at least. So this show, again, great show we had here. It was a theme show, New Year's Evil. This is either the 4th or 5th rendition of the show that we've gotten over the years. And a lot of their theme shows they will do on a regular Tuesday night, much like we got here. Not all of them, have to necessarily take place on a Saturday or Sunday night. They do this a lot of the time. Back in October, they moved Halloween Havoc. They finally went on the road for that one in Pennsylvania. But the last 2-3 years, they had done that right in Orlando. So I guess they pick and choose when to hit the road. And tonight was one of them, even though it was on a Tuesday night nonetheless. So that's good for the roster, too. It seems like the past year or so they've been getting on the road at least once a month. And I think it's good for all the talent, too, to kind of expand their horizons and get out of that little crowd they have, which is good. It's a nice home base they have in Orlando, but it's good for them to get out to all these different cities and states and stuff like that. But enough about that. Let's discuss this New Year's Evil card that took place. A lot of title changes. We have 3 new champions, which we'll get to in just a moment. Now, the opening match was for the NXT Women's Championship. Roxanne Perez, who has held this title since April 6th at Stand and Deliver when she defeated Lyra Valkyria in Philadelphia. And Man, it's been a long time. I mean, to be specific, 9 months, 1 day, give or take. And Lyra Valkyria, this Monday, she's in the finals to become the inaugural Intercontinental Champion. So good for her going up against Dakota Kai. And Roxanne's had a fantastic run. She really has. I want to say she's defended the title upwards of 20 times over the last, again, 9 months successfully. A lot of the times, people thought she was going to lose to these big-name opponents, myself included. And as she would go on and tell us on the next episode of NXT, I proved you guys wrong yet again. So she got us there. But this match was good, as expected. We saw these two go at it, what was it, back in November, I want to say, or October maybe. This was a fantastic match between these two women that we got tonight. Jumping to late in the match, both ladies crashed to the outside right in front of Corey Graves at the commentary desk. And the referee began his 10 count. Now, Cora Jade, she pops out of the crowd. Cora runs out, rolls Roxanne Perez back in the ring, right around the 7 or 8 mark of the referee's count. It looked bad for Julia, not going to lie. Julia made it back in the ring at about 9.5, give or take. Got in there just in time. Roxanne then met Julia with the Pop Rocks, but an unsuccessful pinfall attempt, then followed up with a Fujiwara armbar. That didn't work out either. And then which led to a Northern Lights bomb by Julia for the 1-2-3. And new NXT Women's Champion Julia, so congrats to her. Again, I fully anticipated her getting this win in this rematch. And I said to myself, look, if no other titles change hands tonight, then Julia definitely has to at least get it done. She's got to be the one title change that's got to happen. And I got to be honest, I was a little surprised they opened the show with this. But again, great match. And kudos to Roxanne Perez, who held this title for 270 plus days. This was a fantastic reign. I know she had that very brief reign in 2023. She had a lot going on. She might have even held it then for 100 plus days and beyond, but it was very forgettable. But this one will definitely be etched in the history books as one of the better women's NXT title reigns, that's for sure. So looks like she's well on her way to making her third consecutive Royal Rumble appearance this year. And from that standpoint, she may just remain on the main roster, whether that's Raw, whether that's SmackDown. If you guys remember last year, Tiffany Stratton realistically made her debut on the main roster in any which way at the Royal Rumble. She didn't look back, quite literally. Ends up becoming, first of all, she made it to the Elimination Chamber match in Australia. That was very impressive, just a month later, right, towards the end of February. And she did a great job there. She was very over, pretty much wherever she went in 2024 with the crowd. Ends up winning Money in the Bank in July. And then just the other night, ends up cashing in successfully. Phenomenal cash in, the new WWE Women's Champion on SmackDown. So, look, those are big shoes to fill in the sense of, I don't necessarily think Roxanne's going to do all that Tiffany accomplished in 2024. But that being said, hopefully Roxanne transitions well over to the main roster in the coming month or so. But again, outstanding reign, 9 months, 1 day, upwards of 20 successful title defenses. So shout out to Roxanne Perez and Julia on a fantastic match. Now, after this, we went backstage and we were on a set of steps here where we saw Eddie Thorpe, who was injured on the steps. He was then met by NXT GM Ava, who doesn't believe he's actually injured because he pulled a similar stunt last month. And long story short, it was all the setup just to get a title opportunity, which was tonight. And he looked like the boy who cried wolf. So again, Ava didn't believe that he was attacked. Who could it have been? I believe it was Obafemi. I believe that was confirmed later in the night by him. And so, again, Ava didn't believe it was legit ahead of this NXT title triple threat main event matchup. Now, this would lead us right into the Fatal 4-Way number 1 contenders match for the Women's North American Championship. We had Stephanie Vaquer, Kalani Jordan, Lola Vice, and Cora Jade in this matchup. Stephanie Vaquer hit her finish on Kalani Jordan. I believe it's a package backbreaker, something along those lines, and got the victory. So this match was all right. You know, it's good to see all these women get this opportunity. Obviously, Kalani Jordan being the inaugural North American champion. I think it was pretty obvious who was going to win this. You know, Kalani was not getting another opportunity. The only one outside of Stephanie, maybe, that had some chance in this match, I guess you could say, is maybe Lola Vice. And if you would just want to base it on watching the show Tuesday night, Stephanie Vaquer, she got the first entrance during the commercial break, we didn't see Kalani Jordan or Cora Jade's entrance. And then as they went back on air, we then saw Lola Vice's entrance. So just going by that order of who seemed important enough to get some shine on TV, I was like, yeah, it's got to be Stephanie or Lola in that order, and that's exactly what it was. So Lola, I think, has a very promising 2025 ahead of her. I'm not so sure about Kalani Jordan. I mean, she's continuing to progress for sure. Kalani had a fantastic 2024 without question. Again, becoming the inaugural North American champion there for the women, and getting to team up with Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill during the fall when they made their visit to NXT. So she had a very good year. Cora Jade, I don't know, jury's out. I think the biggest thing for Cora Jade is just her remaining healthy. I'm cheering for her, realistically, but let's be honest, Cora Jade, Nikita Lyons, a couple of contenders in the women's division that were supposed to do big things over these last couple of years and keep getting bit by that injury bug. So I think 2025 is going to be very telltale for those two women, Cora and Nikita, as far as the trajectory of where they're headed in the future with NXT and their WWE career as a whole. But again, Stephanie got this win as most people would expect. And this would lead us to match number 3. Again, this is the third women's match in hour 1, so kudos to the women. Shout out to Shawn Michaels. You know he loves his women, right, on NXT. Gives them shine without question, so that's awesome to see. We had a 6-woman tag team matchup where Fatal Influence, where speaking of the North American Championship, the North American Champion was on this team, that being Fallon Henley alongside Jacy Jayne, Jasmine Nix, going up against the returning Shotzi, Gigi Dolan, and Tatum Paxley. Now, before the start of this match, Triple H and Nick Khan were spotted in the crowd, of course. I think a fan or somebody was walking up to them, so that kind of messed up the whole thing. It looked like a fan. I don't know. Maybe he is an executive. I don't know. Could be wrong, but either or. Overall, very fun match. The way this wrapped up was Shotzi pins Fallon Henley, and I was very surprised. I thought, I thought the baby faces were going over, and I thought Shotzi would be the right person returning after being out almost a year with an injury. Getting her the victory in the pinfall attempt would be great. But I didn't think it would be the North American champion in Fallon Henley. I thought Jacy Jayne or Jasmine Nix, which they kind of go to as far as having to take the L's whenever they get in these kinds of matchups. But that being said, good for the baby faces and Shotzi in her return. Now we're backstage. We had a brief segment here with Ethan Page and NXT GM Ava. Ava had a very busy night on TV, especially knowing that her dad, The Rock, was going to be featured on NXT for the very first time tonight. So The Rock intervenes between a back and forth with Ava and Ethan Page. Rock says to Ethan Page, payback is a bitch for Ethan injuring various talents in the recent past. Rock says he may be the final boss, but his daughter Ava is the final boss here in NXT. And then he goes on to say he looks forward to seeing Page on the main roster one day. Ava and Rock briefly discuss how this is The Rock's first time in front of an NXT audience. He's not sure what he's necessarily going to say. Ava gave him some tips as what to do. Just go out there, kind of be yourself, get the vibe of the crowd. And again, much like Raw, Rock's been very cool, calm, collected, and clearly at this stage of the game, embracing all of the fanfare. Not leaning into any of his heel tendencies as the final boss, at least for the time being. So again, I don't think we're going to see him at WrestleMania at all, at least as far as a character or wrestling match standpoint is concerned. Jumping into hour 2, match number 4, NXT Heritage Cup Championship on the line. Now, this is the first time ever we have sudden death rules, and we have current champion Charlie Dempsey going up against Lexis King. Charlie Dempsey of the No Quarter Catch crew, alongside Miles Bourne, Tavian Heights, and Ren Sinclair for this matchup. And this was pretty good. Again, I was doing pretty good with my card here for the most part. Most of the expected winners were coming out with the victory, and I did have Lexis King getting the win. I thought, hey man, this is a good time to give him some momentum. It's been about a year or so since he's been with NXT, and so this is where you try to really get to show him some motion in this new year. Charlie Dempsey not really needing the win. He's a 2-time Heritage Cup champion. We know what he's about. So Lexis King, he got the win. And the way this went at the end of this match, we had some what looked to be inadvertent contact where Dempsey, his head ran right into the stomach, damn near the groin of Lexis King. It looked painful. Looked very painful. It looked like he was nearly knocked loopy for a second, very disoriented. This then led to King's coronation for the victory. So shout out to Lexis King getting the win here, new NXT Heritage Cup champion. So a lot of new champions on the horizon going into the new year for NXT. So we'll see how that goes. Backstage, now we're with Shotzi, and she approaches Ava and says, look, she wants Fallon because she pinned her for the win tonight, so she wants a shot at that NXT North American Championship. Now, Stephanie Vaquer is right there. Stephanie wants Fallon because, well, she won the number one contendership tonight. So, sorry, Shotzi. Personally, I love you, but, I mean, your argument is valid, but Stephanie legitimately won a match tonight against 3 other women to decide who the number one contender is. So, I'm going to have to side with Stephanie on this one. I don't know why Ava really didn't put her foot down more so. And so, next week, the two will go one-on-one, Stephanie Vaquer and Shotzi. And I don't think there's a stipulation as far as, like, whoever wins becomes the true number one contender. Maybe there is, but I think that's kind of silly if that's the case, because Stephanie outright won Tuesday night for that opportunity. And so if anything, the way this should go, again, I'm not so sure about the stipulation between the two next week, but if I was Ava, the way I would pin this match up is, okay, Shotzi, if you defeat Stephanie, then you'll be added to the match in a triple threat capacity whenever that match is to take place. But Stephanie shouldn't have to put anything on the line. She already punched her ticket Tuesday night and should get that opportunity against Fallon, win, lose, or draw, honestly. So that's how I would book it. And then we lead into the main event. Now it's time for the NXT Championship match where we would see Trick Williams coming out, whoop that Trick, 2-time NXT champion. It's been a lot of fun. He's had a great year plus, tons of momentum, going up against the ruler, Oba Femi, and who was supposed to be Eddie Thorpe, but remember the last time we saw him, he was not looking so good on those steps. So it was a one-on-one match, at least initially. And honestly, you know, Thorpe being added to this match was odd in the first place, as far as I was concerned. You know, me thinking Thorpe would likely cost Oba Femi this match, justifying the loss for Oba was kind of inevitable to me. However, that was not the case, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, I did think Oba would dethrone Trick Williams, not just on this very night. Definitely did not think it would be on Tuesday night, but again, we're going to get to that in just a little bit. We are going to jump to very late in this match where Oba Femi was looking to put away Trick Williams, but Thorpe pulled the referee out, and that prevented the 3 count. Trick Williams shortly thereafter was able to hit his trick shot on Oba, but couldn't keep him down for the 3. Thorpe shortly thereafter ended up striking Trick Williams with a steel chair. And to be honest, I don't think he was initially trying to hit Trick, but that's who he ended up hitting. Either or. That was pretty much it from that point on. Oba Femi hit his fall from grace, which we saw him hit on Trick earlier in the match. Hit his fall from grace for the 1-2-3. Got the victory. I was shocked. Again, I knew Oba was going to win this title sooner or later. I was thinking maybe at Vengeance Day. I believe that's the next theme show they got coming up in early February. I didn't think it was going to be tonight. So that was that. The reign of the ruler has begun. And Oba Femi dethrones Trick Williams. So maybe much like Roxanne Perez, maybe Trick Williams is on his way to the main roster as well, which I could very easily see. What more is there left for him to do? Other than maybe one rematch. That's about it, which they could definitely get done in the month of January, which is still before the Rumble, being that the Rumble is in Indy February 1st. So I think Roxanne, Trick, we see them both in their respective Royal Rumble matches. And I think that's pretty much that. So again, very surprised to see the outcome of this match happen the way it did, but that was that. 2 major title changes tonight, with Julia winning the NXT Women's Championship, obviously Oba Femi winning the NXT Championship over there for the men. And yet NXT still had to end with The Rock. You know, we were getting The Rock, and even with all the title changes that we saw, even including the Heritage Cup championship changed, with Lexis King winning that. Everybody was a champion tonight, new champion. Yet The Rock still had to close the show. And I really hate that, especially for Oba Femi. You know, Oba Femi winning this major championship, especially defeating Trick Williams, a 2-time NXT champion, one of the more exciting champions across WWE collectively in recent history. And his title win should have felt so much more important. Should have went off air with him hoisting it up, honestly. Hoisting up the gold. The show, from the very beginning, it flowed pretty good, but it felt expedited, just so they could, obviously, what we saw at the end of the show, get to The Rock for the last 10 plus minutes. And I was not a fan of that at all. And that's regardless who was going to be coming out at the end. It's nothing specifically against The Rock, although this is typical for The Rock. Very egotistical. Look, it's just the way he moves. It's the way he operates in anything he does. So I didn't like that. I did not like that for a night like this where there was so much going on, so many new champions for the first time, especially in NXT. Nonetheless, it's going to be a very dominant run for the ruler, Obafemi. Majority of 2025, I could see him holding this title easily. The same goes for Julia. I think they're both going to have very long title reigns for sure. Now going to next week, we got a couple matches set up here. NXT Tag Team titles are on the line where Nathan Frazier and Axiom are going to go up against OTM out the mud. And we also have a number one contenders match for the women's tag team titles. We have the unholy union of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn going up against Metaphor's Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson. I believe those were the only matches, at least on TV, that were showing previewed for next week. So let's get to the actual main event. I guess you could say the wrestling's done. But the final act of the show was The Rock. He pretty much opened Monday Night Raw and closed Tuesday night on NXT, New Year's Evil. Now, every time I want to cheer The Rock, he does something unlikable, which is usually him just doing something very egotistical. Again, this is just The Rock's MO. And, you know, it is what it is, man. Let's just move forward here. Anyway, comes out, discusses Cody Rhodes, talks about the fans the last 24 hours or so. Fans last year were saying, don't be mean to him. He's just trying to finish his story. And now, a year later, and after Monday night, fans are saying, you can't be nice to Cody. You know, you pretty much still got a storyline going on with the Final Boss and the American Nightmare, where you guys left off with the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania at Wells Fargo Center. You can't drink tequila with Cody, as he had a 15-minute Instagram Live that was posted to his page, which I watched the majority of. And I'll be honest, I loved every moment of it. I thought it was cool, the interactions with him and Cody and all the other nonsense that went on during this 15-minute video. I thought it was great. And there's a lot of reasons I like The Rock, but then there's reasons like this. The way he had to close the show tonight where I'm like, come on, man. You know. Anyway, goes on to say, at the end of the day, The Rock is the final boss. And he says he's always 20 steps ahead. So he goes and says, know your role, shut your mouth, and just enjoy the ride that The Rock is taking you on. And so, you know, when he initially came out to cut this whole promo and so on, and by the way, he kept getting counted down. You know, everybody on the outside, all the producers or whomever, they were saying, hey, 6 minutes left or 2 minutes until we go off TV. And every time they would mention it, you know, The Rock would have to go on and mention it on TV. And it's like, all right, here and there, it's funny, or you could say it's character or him just being who he is, but The Rock thinks who he is, and I'm not saying he shouldn't, because he has every reason to think who he is, but he's a brat, right? He's a brat, and so that's just how he does, man. So they did still abruptly wrap up by 10 o'clock, so kudos to The Rock and company for keeping things on track here. But initially when he came out, he was saying a whole lot of nothing. He could have easily just came out, music hit. He has that aura, as they say. He has that presence. And then he could have just walked right back to Gorilla. He really didn't need to say anything. Everything we needed to hear pretty much came out Monday night on Raw. But nonetheless, I get it. And his daughter, Ava, is the GM of NXT. So, look, I respect that. But he did say some nice parting words at the end here as they were wrapping up. He says, look, I wasn't quite sure what to say coming here on NXT. But he said, I guess I'll just say thank you. And thank you to all the fans who came here for NXT New Year's Evil. He says it's easy to show up for Monday Night Raw, debuting on Netflix. You know, that's kind of the sexy thing, obviously. Who wouldn't want a ticket to that? But supporting NXT, which is essentially the future of the business. And he says in 3 years, they could be the main event of WrestleMania. He says, or just as easily, you know, we see it time and time again, or they could be out of the business in 3 years or less. But it all depends upon, you know, the trajectory of a lot of things. But just saying, look, these are the up-and-coming men and women, and look, the future. So I appreciate each and every one of you coming out and supporting these individuals on this night. And that was pretty much that. So, I mean, it was cool. It was cool. It was a good save. All he really had going was the whole Cody Rhodes bit, which was funny early on, and then, you know, some nice words to the fans for being in attendance at NXT. But he says he will always come back home to NXT and WWE. So the end of this segment, again, was very wholesome. And that was NXT New Year's Evil, pretty much. So, again, very quality show. I just wish things would have ended differently in the sense of Oba Femi, wrapping things up. Going off air, because they had him and Julia. As soon as Oba won the title, shortly thereafter, you looked up again, and Oba wasn't even in the ring anymore, celebrating, hoisting up his title. He had to go up to the top of the ramp, of the entryway. He was on the left. Julia came out with her NXT Women's title. She was on the right, and they had her name on one side, his name on the other, new NXT champions and so on. They hoisted up their titles. They got some pyro, all special kinds of lights and effects. And again, that's how the show should have went off air. I mean, I like that. The two major champions won on the same night. So look, if Oba Femi wasn't going to wrap up on his own and just get his shine, then yeah, I'm more than okay with something like that as well. But that's what you should have to wrap up a show. Not, hey, look, it's 9:43 and we got to go to a commercial break and come back and we're going to get 10 plus minutes of The Rock. And it's not even like it was anything groundbreaking. Again, we just heard from him at the very start of Monday Night Raw. I think that's what annoyed me more than anything. It wasn't like we're getting some kind of a groundbreaking announcement or we haven't seen him since April or something crazy. It's like, no, we just saw him many a time on Monday night. And so it just seemed very nonsensical, especially the magnitude of the moment for these men and women becoming champions. So this is more of a principle issue with me. A lot of people probably didn't care much. Some people probably love The Rock so much that they could care less regardless of what happened or transpired on NXT. Some people may have just tuned in just to see The Rock, which is fine. You could have tuned in at any time, though, whenever you put The Rock on. You could have had him open the show, could have put him on at 9 o'clock, 9:30, before the main event, which I thought they were initially going to do. And again, no shade to The Rock, man, but that's just my 2 cents. So that is NXT New Year's Evil 2025. And it was a solid show. I enjoyed what I saw. So all the best to these men and women going forward. I'm excited. I'm excited for them. Realistically, we're going to get a lot of new opportunities for these men and women because a few of these people are going to be moving up to the main roster. Again, Roxanne Perez, Trick Williams, and maybe quite a few others. So as always, I want to thank you for tuning into the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I am your host, Pat Deneen, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
Got a question for Pat? Send him an email at turnbuckletopics@gmail.com. That's turnbuckle, TOPIX, @gmail.com. Find him on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Turnbuckle Topics. Thanks for listening to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. Be sure to subscribe. If you like the show, help others find out about it. Leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. Join us next time for another episode of Turnbuckle Topics. See you then.